Hello, 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 you wonderful human beings. It's Casey Kasem here, and I'm back at it again with another episode of Get Real with Casey Kasem. On this episode, I chatted with Tyler Justin Karp, writer for Dynasty League Football. He is constantly and consistently putting out content, whether that be articles for DLF, the Ask DLF stream, videos for his YouTube channel, youtube.com/TylerTheFantasyCreator, and much more. Tyler enjoys answering questions, providing his insight, and letting his ego shine. And it's okay, he's the one who brings that up. In this interview, Tyler talked about being a chess champion, gaining a following, the story behind his nickname, the journey towards having a professional fantasy football career, the ups and downs of social media, and so much more. You're definitely going to want to listen to this one to see what Tyler is all about. Make sure you follow Tyler on Twitter at TylerFFCreator. Also make sure to follow me on Twitter at TheCaseyKasem, as well as the podcast at GetReal_pod. Thank you so much. And now, here's my chat with Tyler Justin Karp. Cool. Yay. I'm so happy. I never record on the weekends, and I'm getting to right now, so that's pretty dope. I love it too. Like, I don't know. I think Saturdays and Sundays are kind of an underrated day to record, or a night to record. I feel like everybody wants to record on weeknights, so
I'm used to it. I during the season, I recorded the weekly recap every Sunday starting at like 11:30 p.m. Eastern. Not even. Sometimes it was 12. It's like that's when we started. We went live, and it was with Ryan, and just like I'm used to it. This is early, 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock.
It's 8 for me too, so it's even earlier. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to get started. We're actually going to, what I want to know first, I've got to ask you, because I do a little bit of research on people before they come on. Surprise, surprise, sometimes. So I Google people, and it's not creepy because I do it for research. But when you Google you, a lot of chess stuff comes up. Yeah. And so can you explain, because I've seen the little picture and I was like, oh, that's him when he's a little tyke. So tell me about that.
Yeah, I was national chess champion when I was like a kid 4 times. I played that for a while. It was nice. I learned to play when I was 3, and played pretty competitively for like, I want to say 10, 15 years. Then I kind of stopped playing. I went to college. I didn't play as much. I was the president of chess club in college. It was a lot of fun. I mean, it was great, but it wasn't the kind of chess club where you actually learn anything about chess. It was mostly just an excuse for me to like host parties or like have friends over. That's why everyone joined the chess club. It wasn't really to learn anything. We just kind of hung out. But so there were a few people who were actually serious, and I liked like still talking about it. But yeah, no, that was mostly something from when I was a kid. I do get though sometimes people from the fantasy football community want to challenge me to a chess game. They've stopped doing this because they've realized they're going to lose. I mean, no one likes to lose, but I have done that a few times with. I forget who I even played. It's been a while since I've done it, but it was kind of fun to like, when I was trying to kind of get myself out there, just to like meet people. But I haven't played with them in a while. I still play on chess.com from time to time. Mostly with my friends from college who I met in the chess club. Actually, we still play. Then a couple friends from here. Yeah.
So being competitive with the chess aspect, I guess did you take that over with all the other things that you do with, your fantasy content, with being in fantasy leagues and everything else, that it kind of just spill over?
I mean, I am competitive, but I'm a weird person when I'm competitive. I'm competitive if I'm supposed to win, but I don't really care if I don't feel like I'm a favorite. It's like pretty much though, whenever I play fantasy football, and this is the ego is coming out. I mean, but we all know this. If you follow my content, that that the ego is real. It's really who I am. I'm not an act. You can ask any of my friends. They would tell you that the me you see on the show is a toned down, a nicer version, less ego. than the real thing. But with that being said, yeah, I mean, when I play fantasy football, I think I should win, and I get annoyed when I lose. Because I think I'm the best. And it's crazy. And maybe that's egotistical, but I do. So yeah, it carries over in that way. Not so much for content creation. I don't really see content creation as a competition. I don't really feel like I'm competing against other people. I don't compare my views to other people. I do want to get more followers, but I don't see that as a race. I don't like feel, I feel better when everyone gets more followers. I want everyone to get more attention. It wouldn't make me feel good to see people have less followers. I never want that. So, maybe in some ways, but yeah, I'm not super competitive with my industry mates. I mean, I do a lot of like promotion, helping other. I use the rising tides metaphor a lot. The boat rising tide, rising tide raises all boats kind of thing. I don't, maybe egotistical, but I don't think it's going to be so easy to just replace me. Like there are few people who can do the like style of show that I do, taking all, Ask the LF, that kind of show. You can't just find anyone and do that show. It wouldn't go well. there aren't that many people who do that. So I'm not afraid of anyone replacing me. I don't worry about that. I just want to see my friends do well, see them create their own content. It's not like, I mean, people are going to want more than one source of content, right? I mean, I am not for everybody. B, spread way too thin at this point to actually interact. I mean, it's over 20,000 followers, and I try to respond to every comment. That obviously isn't possible, but I can't respond to every comment, talk to every patron, respond to every comment on YouTube, every comment on the DLF forum, on my articles. I can't do all of that. So obviously, like there's going to be a demand for people to interact with other creators, and I don't have a problem with that. If anything, I think it's a good thing. I kind of like, I like to create groups and stuff like that to kind of help other people, get their content out there. You'll see a lot of retweets in my feed. If you look at my feed, there are a lot of retweets, a lot of quote tweets. And, some of that gets more attention my way, but, it also, there are a lot of people who they didn't have a lot of attention. And then all of a sudden they became friends with me. And then through a few retweets and quote tweets, all of a sudden more interaction on their posts. And that's a great thing. So I don't mind. It doesn't bother me to, give back in that way. I don't see it as a competition. I really try to avoid that. Like,
oh, that's awesome. That's great. And to be able to put other people's content out, like backing it up, putting like your stamp of approval on it or whatever. It's really cool because that's how I find a lot of like new people to follow, is because somebody retweeted somebody else's article or video or whatever. So that's super awesome of you to do that. And with your growth and everything, I want to talk about your place in fantasy football, the industry. But before we do that, I want to go back, and we were talking about chess. You were a kid. What else when you were a kid? Were you into sports, or was there anything that you were interested in when you were growing up?
Yeah, honestly, like there's not much there. Yeah, I watched football when I was a kid. My childhood was fine. It was okay. There's no real stories there. Honestly, it's a lack of stuff to talk about. I rarely, if you even saw me like talk with my friends or just anyone, I rarely, if ever, talk about the first 18 years of my life. Rarely. I'll talk about chess is one of the only things I actually do talk about. That I do talk about. And a lot of the places I got to travel because of chess. One of which I used to use Russia as the most interesting one. Nowadays, that one. No, I've literally been in Putin's office. Like, we got to go. It's a long story, but it was a charity trip. Like when I was a little kid. Now that doesn't seem. That seems a little. That doesn't seem exciting anymore. That seems sad. In light of what's going on now, but. There are other places. I was in Ecuador, Argentina, that kind of stuff. So I did get to travel for that. And that's something I really appreciate. I got to travel as a kid. But like for stuff as a kid relating to fantasy football, I think I started playing in 2009. So that was 14 at the time. And, Yeah, I mean, I was a football fan, but I played fantasy football for a long time before I was like really into fantasy football. Like maybe like 6, 7 years. There wasn't much as a kid really that like led me to fantasy football. I don't really honestly don't really know like how I got more into it. I was older. It was probably 2016 or 2017. I started listening to the Fantasy Pros and Fantasy Footballers podcast. That's what got me like more into it as like a dynasty, or I guess at that point still a redraft manager. And then I started creating content in 2019. So 2, 3 years after that. But it was those podcasts that got me into it. But yeah, nothing much from when I was a kid. I watched football, but it wasn't even my favorite sport for most of my time growing up. It was definitely baseball when I was a little kid. And I'm from New York, so the Yankees were good when I was very little. And they're still good even when I was not so little. And then I was also a basketball fan, and then football kind of later. And there was also a period of time where I was into soccer, kind of when I was in late high school, early college. I was pretty into soccer as well. So it wasn't really until like 2016, I would say 2016, 2017, that like football became the main sport that I follow.
So how did you stumble across fantasy football to play at the age of 14? How
Yeah.
did that come about?
That's a good question. To be honest with you, I don't remember. Like I honestly don't remember. It was some Yahoo random league that I played in. I honestly have no memory of how I decided to do that. Whatever it wasn't memorable. It wasn't with my friends or anything. It wasn't with anyone I knew. So then in 2010, I joined a couple of leagues that I was in for a while. One with people I met on the internet. That's a really long story. It isn't that important, but just people I met at some random internet site, and then another one with people I met at some like a summer camp. And I was in those leagues for like six years or so each. So maybe that kind of like consolidated that I was going to like continue playing fantasy football. But yeah, as for how I found it originally, I honestly do not know. I wish I could tell you, but I don't know.
Well, with putting out content, when did you decide, I'm not just going to play fantasy football, I'm actually going to put out content? I know you said 2019 was when you
Yeah,
first started, but how did you stumble across that?
it's kind of a good question. Honestly, I think I just kind of decided that I was going to do it. Uh, it wasn't like a long decision process. It's like May 2019. I had one semester of grad school left, and I just applied for a few writing positions at places, and I eventually got one. It actually didn't take very long. You know, I wasn't.
No big deal.
Well, I mean, look, like it's as bad. Not that this is a bad thing, but like I was going to grad school at Columbia for sports management. Whatever it is, like that probably put my application at the top of most people's piles. Like they're probably going to read that one. That's kind of an uncommon thing. Someone who's looking to start out, like I probably got a shot that maybe someone else wouldn't have gotten, because of that. Yeah, so that helped. But I've rarely ever used much I've learned in that degree in my time in the industry. But yeah, it was just something I did, and then it lasted for a while before I really decided to like take it seriously.
What made you decide to go do sports management at Columbia? Like, what was the reasoning behind all that?
That's a good question. So when I went to college, I was pre-med, and I went to medical school for 2 months, and I hated it, so I dropped out. And then I was like, took a while to like think. Wasn't that long. That was October 2017, and I started grad school September 2018. So I started just thinking about it, and then I decided to take the GRE and think about just with the idea of like going to grad school again. Not something like med school, but some sort of master's program in something. I looked at a bunch of different options, and then I just decided that I'd always kind of like sports, and it wasn't really with fantasy football in mind, honestly, that I went to the sports management degree program at all. That came later, but I just thought that I've always liked sports. I always kind of liked the idea of working in some sort of business or management field. So I just decided to apply for that. And there were a couple of good sports management programs in New York City, which is where I live. And I applied to NYU and Columbia. I got into both and decided to go to Columbia. And it was, I think it was a pretty good decision. Unfortunately, I didn't really take a lot of good advantage of my time there. It wasn't in a good time in my life. So it's just like bad circumstances, bad timing. But it's a very good program. I would recommend it to anyone considering a sports management program. I think you would really enjoy it. I can't speak to what it's like during the pandemic. A lot of the good things about that program were things you couldn't have done during the pandemic. So you might not have liked it if you'd gone there during the pandemic, but at pre-pandemic, because I graduated December 2019, so I got the whole thing done before the pandemic started.
Mhm.
It was a great program.
Well, yeah, I mean, I get that. I had some issues managing my time in college and like actually doing what I was supposed to do. But hey, it happens.
Yeah.
But it's cool to see where you are now. And then with DLF, the dynasty in DLF, you're like a dynasty dude. We know you as a dynasty guy. How did
Yeah.
you've talked about redraft? How did you switch over from redraft to dynasty?
So, I mean, it's a good question. I just found a dynasty league one day on the Fantasy Footballers forums. That's actually where I found it. My first dynasty league, and it was fun. I played it, and then that was in May of 2018. And then a year later, I don't know. I just decided I started doing mock drafts at DLF in early 2019. Actually, I still have my old mock draft sheets from back then. But I just decided to create dynasty content back in 2019. I think if I were looking at it now, I would have been like, this space is way too saturated. I would probably would have just turned around and gone home. But back then it wasn't the same level of saturation that it is now. And I just thought that maybe I could make a name for myself here. And I wrote a Dynasty Football Factory for a while. It is what it is. I obviously I left to go to DLF, and I'm pretty happy about that. And but yeah, they gave me the first chance. I was there for almost, I guess, a year and 9 months or so. And I've been at DLF since February 2021, so I'm a little over a year.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, and like going from one site to another site, a lot of people are, kind of move over, move around, move up, and do all that. So going from one place to another, did you have any reservations, or did you feel, I know you're an egotistical dude, but
Yeah.
did you have any sort of like, oh man, this change might be a little hard or different for me?
A little, but honestly, it was time for me to go. And I think we can leave it at that. For why it was time for me to go. So yeah, definitely time for me to go. And I was very happy to go to DLF. I love DLF. And I don't know if people know this. I don't even know if the people at DLF remember this, but DLF is the place I originally applied to write when either the first place I applied when I was sending out my original applications back in 2019 to write at fantasy sites. They're actually the first place I applied, and they turned me down. But that's where I wanted to write in the first place. The DLF podcast was the first dynasty podcast I listened to. I'd been active on their forums actually for quite a while before I applied to write there. So they were actually my original first choice. So since it was them that came calling, obviously they poached me, essentially came to me. I was obviously going to say yes because they were the one I wanted to write for in the first place. So I think that made it easier because they were kind of where I saw myself wanting to write before I even started in the industry. So it's obviously easy to say yes to the place you wanted to be.
And all those people over there are just like great people. And how was it like getting to actually talk to these people and interact with them? Some of them are
Yeah.
like legends, like for real.
Yeah, it was intimidating at first, less so now. I'm at this point, I'm one of the more well-known people at DLF. Not so when I started there, though. Not so. When I started, I had maybe like 2,500 followers. I didn't have a YouTube show on their network. I had a podcast that called the Dynasty Duo. I think we had just started it, or maybe we were about to start it, but nobody listened to it yet. So like nobody really knew who I was at that point. So yeah, it was probably a little bit intimidating, especially with some of the bigger names. Nowadays, I wouldn't say it would be rare. I mean, when Matthew Berry followed me, maybe if he had messaged me to, he didn't. But if he did, that might have been intimidating. But it is rare that anything outside of that, something like that these days would. But yeah, definitely at the time, I'd always looked up to the people at DLF, and they've really welcomed me. I mean, they've never really had. I mean, they haven't had someone like me in their team in a while. I don't think, someone who is pretty, has a larger following, who definitely wants to eventually have a job in the industry. That's definitely not the majority of people at DLF fall into that category. And they've always been good about trying to make me feel comfortable there. I really don't. I really only have good things to say about my time at DLF. Whenever there's been any sort of issue, we've always worked through it. I really, and I wouldn't shy away from it. I mean, I wouldn't, like, if I had something to say, I would, but there really isn't anything. I've been pretty happy with my time there.
And you mentioned YouTube, and I know that YouTube is something that is really important to you, something that you really enjoy doing. When did you decide to make the jump to doing YouTube, and how has that experience been?
That's a good question. So the Ask DLF show was not my idea. I forget exactly who came up with it. It might have been Cal. It certainly wasn't. Maybe it was partially my idea, but having this kind of YouTube show was not really. It's not like I decided that I needed to be on YouTube. It came from kind of a joint effort at DLF. So that was kind of my introduction to YouTube, and then I created my own YouTube channel. This was honestly. It's something, and I think the people at DLF know this. It's something I kind of did out of a little bit. I just decided to do it one day. I wanted to do more videos on their channel. It wasn't. It was they didn't want the DLF YouTube channel to turn into the Tyler YouTube channel. I understand that, and I just decided that I wanted to have my own space to do some of my own content. And I just thought it was better for that to do it that way, just because I didn't want to like make anyone feel uncomfortable there if I was making too much content or taking up too much space on the channel or anything like that. I didn't want that, and I just felt it would be easier if I wanted to create more content. I wanted to be able to do that, so I just made my own channel, and that way. And I think that's actually been a really good thing, because we haven't had like any tension around that. Ever since then, that was. It's always a good thing when you when everyone can be happy. Like, yeah. I get to create more content. They don't have to worry about one person being too prominent on the channel, and everyone is happy. So I'm happy it worked out that way. But that's what actually pushed me to make my own YouTube channel. It was just something that I did one day. Honestly,
YouTube is like something that I shy away from. Like, I don't do YouTube.
Brutal.
But so doing the YouTube thing, though, putting it all together, getting it all, how and doing live shows and everything, having all that thrown at you and having to balance all of it, like, what is some advice you can give to other people that are in that same situation, that are like starting their YouTube and don't know what to do?
It's hard. My advice, honest advice, is don't start your own YouTube. It wasn't worth it. It worked for me. I have a large following, large enough to support it, but you're not going to succeed on starting your own YouTube at first without one. So YouTube is something, and I've said this once, even my YouTube is honestly, I consider it oftentimes to be a failure. Like, considering my following, it has less than 400 subscribers. It's like maybe 100 to 200 views on a video, but that's not a success. I'm not going to be able to monetize that. As someone who wants a job in the industry, that's a failure. And that's me, like, with a, larger than most people who start a YouTube channel, larger than their followings. And I can't. It had its own Twitter account.
Mm-hmm.
It just still isn't working. So I don't know if a YouTube channel is the best. Like, if you love, and I always say this, and I always want this part to be heard. If you love it, do it anyway. Just ignore my advice.
Yeah.
Ignore it. If you love doing the content, just don't listen to anything I say. Do the content you want, whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter. If you're just doing it to enjoy it, do it. But if your goal is to like make money or really like progress your following, it won't happen through your own YouTube unless you're really established brand. And I think most people listening to the show probably know who I am. And I'm not established enough. I'm not, big enough to have my own YouTube. I failed. Like, doing start-sit shows, I had to quit doing them. I had to quit doing the Sunday start-sit show because it didn't have enough viewers and it was really wearing on me to go live in the middle of the craziness of Sunday morning. It just wasn't worth it. So I quit doing that show. So essentially I failed doing that. So I just would say it's a long, hard road. Just be aware of that.
But you listened to yourself when you knew that it was wearing you out and it wasn't going where you wanted it to go, instead of driving yourself into the ground and getting crazy about everything. Like, you figured out, and sometimes it takes a little, I'm obviously, I don't have any room to talk. I'm not a full-time person in the industry, but I know that it's hard sometimes to like figure out exactly what works. But once you figure it out, then like I see you figuring it out and getting, and you coming from you being a person who wants a full-time job in the industry. A lot of times people are just doing this for a hobby, like we had brought up and you had brought up. But you're doing this because you have a goal that you want to achieve. You want to do something. You want to be something. So when did you decide I want to do this full time though? Like, when did you decide I need that is something I want to have a big career. I want to be that guy.
That's a good question. It certainly wasn't when I started creating content. I was still in grad school at that point. This certainly wasn't my plan. There isn't a moment. I definitely will say, if the pandemic doesn't happen, we're not doing this podcast right now. We're not doing this podcast. I'm doing something else. I'm probably working somewhere else. I don't know what I'm doing, but we're not doing this podcast. I'm doing something else. I don't know what that would be. So it was sometime after that. But I don't know exactly when it was. It was sometime when I started gaining traction. I would say that right before I went to DLF, there was a good moment where I thought about quitting. Pretty much since I've been at DLF, and especially since the season started, I've had more confidence that I can make this work. But I haven't had a lot of doubt about that recently. But yeah, when I thought about it for the first time, probably at some point in 2020.
And the pandemic when I talk to people, it has helped people. The pandemic's crappy, but how many people I've seen?
It's a bad thing.
It's a bad thing,
yeah,
but how many people I have seen come out of just a few months of just being stuck at home and like coming up with like, I want to do this, and like actually like blowing up. It's insane to see. And then like, how did you start getting people interested in your stuff so that you started getting more followers on Twitter? Because you said you started off, with a small amount, and then boom.
Yeah. I wish there was a secret. I wish there was a secret I could tell you. I would say respond to as many comments as possible. There are a lot of things that I do to gain followers that people do not like. They don't like it. They don't like that I basically, if you don't follow me, it's like your comment doesn't, I have the notifications turned off for people who don't follow me. So I get to those when I feel like it, which most of the time is relatively soon. But when I'm busy, it could be never. I just never see those. And the reason I do that is, one, to save me time and make sure I get to the people for the followers first. But also, it lets me separate out the people who don't follow me so I can try to get them to follow me. Look, and people hate this. People do not like this. They do not like that I am, you can use whatever word you want, obsessed, focused on, followers. But I am, that's great for them if they're doing this as a hobby. I see this differently. To me, it's kind of like, if you're asking me for fantasy advice and you don't follow me, I don't know. I get it, but like I don't really have any incentive to help you. So like I have hundreds of followers who ask. So that's the main thing I've done recently to gain a lot of followers, is just be aggressive in trying to acquire them. And I hate using that word, but like again, this is something people do not like. They don't like it about me. I get, there are a lot of people who dislike me just for this one thing. I do not care, because, to be honest with you, those people are mostly fantasy analysts who don't like my content, and they're never going to give me $1 anyway. So I don't care. But, the way I gained followers is not necessarily popular. So, take it with a grain of salt.
Everybody has their own way of doing things, so that's just your way. And you know what? To me, Twitter is your Twitter. You do whatever you want. I'll do whatever
I know.
and it's like, there's so many different things about Twitter. You can mute people, you can block people, you can turn off certain words.
I have over 800 people blocked.
Oh, so there you go.
So I use the block button liberally, because at this point I have like a 1 strike and you're out policy. I'm just not. I don't have time for this anymore. Like it's just, some people, like, they don't even know me. They don't know me, and they're just like come in with these things, like saying it's like very hurtful things, and I'm like, I guess this made you feel better. I don't. Why? Like, what was the point of this? If you didn't like it, you could have just scrolled or muted me. Or block me. You could have blocked me if you didn't like me. Just get me out of your life. If I'm not for you, like, feel free. Like, you don't have to. No one's making you follow me.
Yeah.
If you want to have fantasy advice from me or whatever, that's fine. But if there are other people who you prefer, go for it. But I don't know why people take the time to. Every time I post any rankings list, it's like I go through and there's 20 blocks just from that thread. I just don't. Mean stuff. I get stuff about my face, about my hair. I turn my DMs off. It's over a year at this point. I turned my DMs off because I got like 3 people who were thrying to kill me in 1 week. Yeah, no, I had to tell the people at DLF about that one to do something about it. But I just it can be bad. It can be bad.
It can be bad, and I have my DMs turned off too. Sorry to the people that want to reach out. Sorry, it's for your mentals. You kind of just need to like not have all that negativity. You don't need to have that. So I feel you, and man, that sucks. But but you're such a positive dude, and like you said, helping people
Thanks.
up, and it's great to see, and it's great to see somebody with such a following be like that towards people that are just starting out, or people who don't know what they're doing, or people who are like, this is my 3rd article, and you're like helping them out. So I love that.
I really don't care about how many followers the person interacting with me has.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter. I don't care about that. Like, I'll interact with someone who has 10 followers the same way that I would interact with someone who has 10,000. It doesn't matter. Like, to me anyway. I try to I don't respond to comments of larger accounts faster or with more or anything. I try to get to everybody. That is difficult, but a lot of the times I see someone who doesn't have a lot of followers but who creates a lot of content, and I feel bad they're not getting any attention. I try to I try to help them out. And yeah, there are a lot of success stories if you look at my retweets. Look at my retweets, and I'm sure I don't have the evidence to prove it, but I'm sure you can look at the graph of their
Somebody will probably go figure it out.
I'm sure you can look at their Twitter analytics, and you would see that their impression counts have risen. And that's what I want to do, especially for people who create a lot of good content but aren't getting the views on it, because we know that views. I don't think that my content is 10 times better than people who have 2,000 followers. I don't think so. I don't think my content is 10 times better. I think I'm really good at what I do, but I think there are a lot of people who are. And we know that good content eventually rises to the top, but it can take a while. So if I can give someone that like nitro kick at the beginning, I always want to.
And bands, headlining bands bring out all these opening acts, and it's kind of the same thing. You start learning about new people, and it's kind of all intertwined.
I interact with probably hundreds of thousands of people a day, and I always I try my best to keep like I'm a pretty extroverted person and pretty good socially, so I try to keep a good snapshot of everyone I interact with on Twitter. Obviously I can't do that. Not perfect, but I recognize the same handles if they're in my feed a lot, and I try to remember that, just form some good relationships. I just like to do it. I don't. It's fun.
Do you ever get worn out from doing all the interactions? Because
Yes,
it's a lot.
Yes, yes, I do. I've made a lot of posts, being tired. Sometimes it's not about fantasy football. Sometimes I'm just tired, or tired about something else or another thing. But yeah, sometimes I get tired. Sometimes I just don't feel like going through my notifications. I will pretty much always respond to my DMs, because those are patrons, and they're paying me. I feel a little differently. But on Twitter, I want to respond to everyone. But really, I don't feel like I owe anyone a response ever. I try to, but I'm not really doing it because I feel like I owe them. I'm doing it because I like to, and I like the reputation I have for being the guy who, like, the fastest responder, the guy who responds the most, the best, most often. I like that reputation. But if it's gonna be, if I'm like on a date or hanging out with my friends or whatever, like, or I'm high or too high to respond, like, sorry, like, I'll get back to you in the morning. Hopefully it wasn't a big deal.
You're not gonna want my advice when I'm drunk, really. I mean, maybe you do want my advice when I'm drunk, but
I used to drunk when I used to drink. I used to drunk tweet, but I don't drink anymore, so I can't drunk tweet.
Yeah, you guys can probably tell when I do, but anyway.
I can't tell.
It's because I'm always a little out there. So Twitter is like this crazy community of fantasy football. Like the Twitter community is just crazy. Like, how did you stumble across fantasy football Twitter in the first place?
Good question. I think that's where I look to apply for writing positions. I don't know exactly what gave me the idea to go onto Twitter, but it was that period of time. And then, when I started Dynasty Football Factory, they said, well, it was part of this. You have to create a Twitter account. I had one, but not. You have to create a Twitter account with some sort of thing, and I just did that. And I've changed the handle a couple of times since then. Actually, most recently yesterday.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was like okay, I have something else written down. I mean,
yeah, no, I yesterday I had a little bit of I don't want to say a meltdown, but I got, I always say, like, whenever you see like a somewhat angry style post for me, it's because someone probably poked the bear somewhere. The bear was poked yesterday, and I was just like, I don't know if you saw my post. It got a lot of interaction, or not a lot of interaction, but it got a lot of likes and a lot of a lot of support, and people. It was only positive comments on the post. A lot of comments about how everyone thought it was this way, but basically I was just saying how whenever I'm speaking on Twitter, I'm talking from me, not my co-hosts, especially not DLF. just for me. I'm only talking for me, but people didn't seem to understand that. No matter what I said or did, people didn't get that. Because I had DLF in my handle, people didn't understand. People don't, I think this, and I've said this a few times, but I think it's not widely known that, like, let's say if you asked my average follower, not someone from the industry, just my average follower, they would probably think that I'm an employee or own part of DLF. Neither of those are true. You know this. Like, everyone has like an independent contractor agreement. That's the usual standard at all these sites. It was that way when I was at Dynasty Football Factory, same way at DLF. The same way that my agreement with Underdog is also an independent contractor agreement. All of those things are all independent contractor agreements. So I don't even technically represent DLF. When I'm on their channel, on their show, then you could maybe argue that in some way I represent DLF. But on Twitter, the contract actually very clearly states that I actively do not represent DLF in like my Twitter capacity or like my personal capacity. I do not. It's literally in the contract that I do not speak for them. But, because I had DLF in the Twitter handle, and really at DLF, if you look at it, who are the biggest accounts at DLF? It's Ryan McDowell, the DLF account, and then me. So people just assume that big Twitter account means big part of DLF, and that's just not true. I'm just as much a part of DLF as all the other writers, and there's nothing. I don't have a special agreement with them in any way. Maybe I have a YouTube show, so I guess in that respect, I might be different than some of the other writers. But in terms of like legally, I don't speak for them at all. It's like I said, it's literally the opposite of that. So I just was like, I have to change this. This is coming up too often. So I changed it.
Well, I saw that tweet actually. That would be the reason you changed your handle. I was like, didn't actually get that they went hand in hand. But yeah. No, I think that a lot of people don't get that. I think a lot of people think that just because you write for a site that you are, like you were saying, you don't.
I just think that I have too many followers who don't actually follow the fantasy football industry very closely. They're just following me because they wanted my start set advice. So they're not thinking they don't know about the inner workings of the industry. They have no idea how this works. Like, I heard a lot whenever there's a scandal about someone at one of these sites, it's always, well, I feel bad that this person is losing their employment. I'm like, that person was not employed by that. That person had a job. That person, maybe they lost their job, but they're losing their position at whatever fantasy site is not affecting their livelihood at all in any way. This is, writing at these sites. Most of these sites don't pay very much. And some of them pay more than others, but, nobody has a job, unless they literally say that they did, and there are people who do, but 99.9% of fantasy football writers are doing it as an independent contractor. So, it's not that way, but that's not widely known, I would say, outside of like the Twitter community you mentioned. Inside that community, I think everyone knows that. But in the larger Twitter, I think people would be surprised to learn that. So, I kept getting, and the other thing I really hated getting was like, I'm getting questions about the DLF website.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you too. I had to ask.
Analyzer. Like, I cannot help you with that. I ask questions about the DLF website. I don't know anything more about it than I did before. Other than that, my articles are there. Like, the only difference is that I can ask Addison, how does the tool work? Like, I have a direct line. Like, I can ask Ryan McDowell to give me an ADP I didn't have. I have insider information that you wouldn't be able to get otherwise, but I don't know how the website, like, someone was asking me about the website load time. I'm like, I cannot help you. I don't know.
That's way out of my responsibilities.
I can bring it to their attention, maybe, but I don't even know who to tell about that. It's just not my responsibility. I just create content there. I don't know. And also, especially with me with like tech, like, I'm, for someone who's a millennial, 27-year-old millennial, tech is not, you're really asking the wrong person if you want to ask a website question. There are horror stories about me and my Excel spreadsheets that are so messy and all over the place. I don't took me a while to I used to copy in the ADP one by one. So yeah, no, very bad. So yeah, tech is not, so I really cannot
Yeah.
help you.
You said you're 27 and I'm like, "Oh my goodness." Okay, because I'm 38, so, like, when I talk to a lot of you, like, really motivated people at 27, when I was 27, I was not motivated at all, so it's insane to me to see 27-year-olds with such a mindset.
Yeah. No, I would say also like the younger generation than me is even hungrier.
Yeah.
Like I'm not sure that if I were doing this today and I had to start over, that I would do it. I think like it's a different world. I think I got in kind of just in time where like it wasn't as, because some of the things like the pandemic, I think turned a lot of the internet into a very dark place. Like this Twitter community is not like how it was when I got here. I haven't been here that long, since 2019, but it is not the same community camaraderie. It isn't that anymore. It is in some ways. I don't want to say it's all bad, but there's a lot more negativity, a lot more infighting, a lot more just stuff that I wouldn't, if I had to do the same rise now, I just think I look at the community and I'm like, I'm good. Like I'll pass. I'll find another career. It's a little different already being there, but it has changed a lot in the last 2 years. I really do not think that, I don't, in a lot of ways, the pandemic had a lot of this. When we were talking about the pandemic, I think the pandemic is mostly bad. It's mostly been bad. It's given people a lot much. They had a lot too much time on their hands in a lot of ways, and they just found time to say. I just think that 2 years ago people would have not said some of these things, and now for some reason that seal was opened, that it's okay to say more stuff on the internet than they would have otherwise, and it's just, if you look at the threads, how often now do you see someone who is saying something like they're burnt out on Twitter or they're not happy with the community, or yeah, you were saying, you just, ruined
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't feel like we saw that to the same degree 2 years ago. So that's just, it's a little bit sad. I don't know if I would have the stomach for the fight to get up, because I think a lot of the way that people get a following now is by taking others down. I refuse to do that.
Yeah.
I won't do it. And I think if I had tried to do the same growth now, I would have failed. I think it would have been hard. So I'm glad that I don't have to do that. But what I see among people who want to grow nowadays is like that works to a degree. It'll help you get a few followers, but you won't you won't win that way.
And you're not gonna sustain those followers either. People see your true colors come out. They're gonna
You'll sustain the ones you have, but you'll have a ceiling on your growth. You're
okay,
not
you
going to
won't
have,
sustain me. How about that? I won't be there for very much
well,
longer.
yeah, or me either.
Yeah.
Like you won't have me, but you won't hit it big that way. You
Mm.
might have a nice Twitter presence of some followers, but you won't, you need to actually raise people up
Yeah.
to make it. And it's another thing people don't like. It's another thing I get. People think, I get this criticism too, that people think that the only reason that I have a larger following is because I make nice with everyone and support other people. And it's not because of my content, it's because of all the other stuff I'm doing behind the scenes. And I'm like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
That's the way the world works.
That's the way
That's the way the
world
world works. It's not always the absolute best product that wins. Sometimes it's the best product, slightly in, maybe not the best product, but the person who works on actually forming genuine relationships with influencers, their community, their fans, and all that person might do a little bit better than the person who spends all their time on content and doesn't worry about making relationships in the community. So, but unfortunately, I think that a lot of people have lost their way on that one
Yeah.
these days.
I hate to see it too because, like, I've been around for a while. I didn't start putting out content until the pandemic hit. Well, I mean, I was writing, but I didn't decide to start like a podcast. The reason I started a podcast was because the community, I want to talk to the people that, can show the way you should be, the way you should act, the way you should, not saying that everybody has to be the same, not at
Yeah,
all. What I'm
and
saying
I'm not
is
perfect.
the only way you're going to get anywhere is making getting relationships, getting a following, getting a fan base. And if you're not just doing it like I'm doing it for a hobby, just anytime somebody interacts with me, I'm just like, and I know that you're doing this for not just a hobby, but I'm sure anytime somebody interacts with you and really seems like they care about what you have to say, that's gotta put a smile on your face.
It does. I mean, I get endorsement. Like, I get endorsements on Twitter. You can look through I retweet them nowadays because I just it just makes me, I don't know. I like, someone made a nice comment about me. They took the time to write a whole comment saying about how great I was. Why not give them a retweet? Maybe they'll get some followers out of that. I don't see an issue with that. But if you look at my retweets, you'll see a lot of those are endorsements of me. And I'm like, it makes me feel really good to read those. Most of the really good endorsements are ones that people never see. They're from my patrons in DMs, and obviously I don't share those. But there are a couple of stories. There's the one patron, he had a kid, and his kid had always been part of like a losing fantasy team, and they drafted together, and because of me they like won more games, and his kid was like really happy. And they like, I think his kid even like took a picture with a sign thanking me and
Oh,
like
that is
sent it to
so
me.
awesome.
Yeah, and it's like there are things in life that are more valuable than money. Like, of course I want, people to pay for my advice, but that is like great. Like, that makes me feel good. Like, I made a kid smile because my fantasy advice was good. Like, it made him happy. So it can be like a little thing like that. That's just one story. There, are a lot of other ones that's usually the one I tell if I have to come up with one. But there are definitely a lot of people who really appreciate my content. I give it, pretty often, and I'm pretty reliable. And I just, I don't know. I don't understand sometimes actually that I get as much positive feedback as I do, because I don't ask for it that often, but it's just nice. It makes me want to keep going, I guess. It's, if it were only about the money, it wouldn't. Why would I do this, right? I it, there are I you know a master's degree from Columbia. I could. There are other careers. I can get another job that I could make more money faster whenever. Like, I could. So it has to be about more than the money, and that's one of the main things beyond the money that motivates me to do this. And I also want to be happy in life, right? Like, I definitely had some times in my life that I wasn't so happy. So, this is part of trying to turn that around.
What else makes you happy besides fantasy football?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, probably less than you would hope. No, I mean the usual things, like the usual things people enjoy, spending time with friends. Uh, it's a lot of it. It's a lot of what I do
Yeah.
in my spare time is spend time with friends, and I would say that's a lot of what makes me happy.
So, well, that's awesome because that kind of like brings me to a question that I had. I was listening, like I said, I did a little research, and I was listening
Yes.
when you were on with Goat District. You were doing a commissioner evaluation,
Oh
and
yes,
you brought up,
that was a long show.
yeah, it was. Well, and I hopped around. I'm not gonna lie, my attention span is like that of a
Yeah, it's a
gnat. Like,
3 hour show.
yeah, it was. I saw that, but that was a fun show, and you brought up, I think it was that show that you brought up the story with your name about
Oh
your
yeah.
nickname. So what exactly for the people that didn't hear that? But go ahead and just kind of like let me hear that story from your mouth right here, right now.
Sure. Okay, so Tyler's just a nickname. I literally I've told this story many times, but it was a joke. I just like went to an event and just like I made an inside joke. I went with two of my friends, oddly named Jordan and Jordan. uh, they're probably not listening, but if they are, one of them likes football. But I just made a joke that like we would just call me Tyler just to like pull one over on the new people we were going to meet. It was a board game thing. I do a lot of like board game events, but that's what it was. And we just like pulled a joke for the whole night. And then I just never corrected it. So, and now here we are.
Well, I mean, that because usually people's nicknames aren't names, so that's pretty cool.
It was literally just a joke. Yeah, it was just a joke. It was just like, we're just going to pretend like this is the real thing. Like, just because like, ooh, we all know each other. We're going to like pull one over on these new people we're meeting. And then here we are.
This is the longest joke ever.
Like 2.5 years later, we're still doing it. But for some reason, it just kind of, what ended up happening is like that group of people that I thought I would go to this event once and never come back. I actually just went to this same event 2 days ago. So same place 2 days ago. So 2.5 years later, I'm still going to the same event. So clearly I ended up being a lot closer friends with these people than I thought I would. So I see those people a lot more than like the original friends I went with. So it just like, that's kind of how it ended up sticking, because I kept seeing these people over and over again. I just never corrected it for a while. Oops.
And so now everybody that's met you since knows you as Tyler.
Yes.
But do your, your family members, your older friends, do they they don't call you, or what do they call you?
Pretty much everyone calls me Tyler. There are a few people who don't. I mean, I used to go like my real name is in my Twitter bio. It's not like hide it. It's literally right there. I literally put it out there so you can see it. But and I used to go by that on Twitter. It's just before I had really like any followers. So most people don't remember that. But I would say that. So right around the time that we played this joke was right after I like had my divorce, which I don't know if I talked about on any of these shows you listen to. Maybe not.
This might be the podcast everybody talks about if you want to.
Well, I just wasn't sure if you knew about. I
didn't know about it
that often.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about it. So
yeah, so I wasn't sure if I'd mentioned it on any of the shows you listen to. But I just, I kind of went through like a lot of meeting new people after that.
Mm-hmm.
So most, with like few to no exceptions, almost every friend I have is someone I met after I played that joke. I don't have a lot of friends that's why like we kind of glossed over like my early childhood. I don't have that many friends from back then. And a lot of the people I met, because I met my ex-wife in college, and a lot of the people I met in college, were through her, and I just didn't really keep up with them after we broke up. So yeah, most of the people are people I've met after that. From the people who are before, it's hit or miss. There are some people, I do have a couple of close friends, and they'll call me Tyler, but they're, my mother, like my parents, my relatives are the ones who, definitely are the hardest to get on board. But I think I will, but it could take a while. It doesn't bother me. It's not a big deal. I just it's easier to make fantasy creator names with Tyler than it is with Justin. So
I like the one that you came up with now. For people that don't know like the meaning behind how it kind of is if you get it, you get it kind of thing. What exactly does the handle mean?
So I guess it's kind of like a joke on Tyler the Creator, but I don't even listen to Tyler the Creator. I just came up with it one day, and then essentially this current handle at Tyler FF Creator, it was the handle for my YouTube channel backup account. So I just decided that people already knew me as that on YouTube. That's my YouTube channel is Tyler the Fantasy Creator. So people already knew me as that on YouTube. So I was just like, I'll make my main account this if I'm going to change it out of. I used to be at DLF_Karp, but I decided that had to change.
Yeah.
And again, nothing against DLF at all. I specifically said that in the post where I said I was going to change it. This has nothing to do with them. If anything, I think this will be better.
Yeah.
This will be better that
That
they
makes
don't
sense.
that there's no confusion about they don't want I don't think they would want the misconception that I'm like involved in the running of the site to persist. I think they would actually prefer that we don't have that confusion. And honestly, none of the people at DLF outside of the ownership group have a DLF handle. Ryan McDowell doesn't. Matt Price doesn't. So I don't know. And Ryan McDowell's in the ownership group, and he doesn't. Even he doesn't have a DLF handle. So the only ones who really have them are Ken Kelly, Ken Moody, and Jeff as well have DLF handles. But other than that, it's not like most creators at DLF have a DLF handle. So I asked them about it originally, and they said it was okay. So I did it, but it's definitely not like everyone at DLF has a DLF handle, and I'm like making a move to be different. I'm actually making a move to be in line with everyone else.
Yeah. Well, and you were being proactive about it, so that's cool that you got ahead of it.
I would have felt weird about it if I were now the only creator at DLF without a DLF underscore handle, but
you guys are gonna slowly start taking
very much
it.
not the case.
See who's the next to change theirs up. But
well, people always change their Twitter handles all the time. And on the DLF forums, we all have DLF underscore accounts because in that respect, we actually are more speaking for DLF because we're DLF riders speaking on the forum on DLF's own forum. It's a little different. So if you see me on the DLF forum, I am at DLF underscore Tyler K, and I will continue to be that. So you'll be able to find me as DLF staff if I ever comment on the forum. I don't comment there that often, but if I ever do.
So people, you got the scoop here. So you know what's happening with the whole thing, but people can find you now. Hopefully they'll I can't change my Twitter handle. I'm just like crazy about when I first started, I was originally at Casey Kasem, and then I was like, I don't want Twitter, and I deleted it. And then it was a time period where then they were like, sorry, somebody has your handle. I was like, what the heck? So then I'll put the
someone thought that I was on a podcast with the guy Casey Kasem. They thought he was still alive.
Okay, so here's the deal. So here's the deal. So my last name's not really Kasem, but nobody gets that. That's born after a certain period of time because I don't know. So people will always be like Casey Chasm, Casey, and I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah, so
I'm showing my age here.
Someone in my Patreon group was actually asking if I was going to be on with the radio.
With Scooby.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't think so. Man, I think he's dead. I'm pretty sure. But dead. No, so I actually listened. You ever heard of Rob Has a Podcast?
Maybe.
It's a very popular, it's very large. It's a very large podcast. Not quite on the level size-wise of the fantasy footballers, but it's not that much smaller.
Okay.
It's a very large podcast community. It's not about fantasy football, but the guy who hosts it was on Survivor, and he did a Casey Kasem impression. And one of the times he was voting someone off, so that's how I know who Casey Kasem is.
Okay, because I was about to say you said you were 27. I was like,
yeah, I actually have no clue. I don't know who the person Casey Kasem is. I don't know anything about him, but I know of him from that guy's podcast. And he also does a whole song parodies thing on his channel.
Oh yeah,
of which he takes on a Casey Kasem voice for that period of time. So I unfortunately have heard the name Casey Kasem more times than I ever want to, but that's why I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, it's just gonna be Casey Kasem from here out. It can be Casey, whatever. You guys can do whatever you want with that.
Yeah.
But, names are funny, aren't they? Now this is kind of towards not the end. I mean, we've got a little bit more time, but I start getting a little off the rails at this time. So bear with me here. But so talking about, you said you met your friends at a board game convention type thing. What exactly really... what is it, a gathering?
Yeah, it's more of a gathering. In New York City is a big city, so they have a lot of these kind of meetup style things, meetup app is actually what this one was on. A lot of them, but yeah, no, it's just a place where people can go. They're obviously they stopped doing those for a while during the
Yeah.
pandemic, but I started going to them before, and now we're back to doing them. So yeah, it's like a meetup style thing. I don't know if anyone's used if you're listening and you use the meetup app, just think of anything you've done on there, and it'll be like that.
So what kind of games do you like to play?
Well, like not like Candyland, but I'm looking at my board game cabinet over there. I mean, I have Dominion, Terra Mystica, Seven Wonders, Mysterium. If you're listening and you've heard of any of those kind, yeah, like somewhat complex, but none of those are like super complicated games.
Have you ever talked to Paul Tarchian about board games?
I've never talked to Paul Charchian at all.
He's a big board game dude, so you know. When
I
he
would
came
like
on, we
to.
talked board games for like a very long time.
Yeah, I'd like
So,
to talk to him, but
hey
I
man,
know of him, but I've
he's a
never
pretty cool
interacted
dude.
with him.
I was just thinking because I feel like there are a lot of people in the fantasy football space that really like playing board games. So
There are, yeah, I definitely haven't had the chance to talk about it very much. My chess experience is actually probably some of the limited experience I've had playing any games with people from the fantasy community.
hmm
But yeah, I'm sure that would be a lot of fun. I'm always looking for ways to connect with people.
And okay, so you're in New York,
Yes.
but you've traveled. You talked about traveling earlier. But where's the coolest place that you've ever been?
Again, I don't like I said at the start of the podcast, I used to say Russia, but
Yeah.
not anymore.
Is there any
Not
place
any
outside of
not
the places
anymore.
that like? Was there a place though that like kind of just besides Russia that like blew your mind, maybe,
Yeah.
or like what's different than you thought,
Honestly,
maybe?
the thing that was most interesting about Russia is that it sucked.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was not. Everyone was very unhappy when I
Yeah.
was there. So I can kind of see what's going on, but this is not my political soapbox.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to Venice. That was kind of nice. I was in Paris. Those are kind of cliche answers. I guess go to the French Open when I was in Paris. That was actually really
Oh,
nice. I went to
cool.
the Olympics in London.
Oh, wow.
Neither of those were chess trips. There's just other trips, but those were a lot of
Yeah.
fun. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like getting to go to the Olympics was pretty cool. Getting to go to the French Open was also really cool. Those are a couple of the things and those are sports things. So I'm
Yeah.
pretty into sports, and I always kind of have been. But yeah, I've been a couple of other places. But yeah, those are probably the ones that stand out.
Those are pretty cool experiences to be able to say that you were able to do that stuff. Like that's really cool. And I know with the pandemic, travel has been yeah. But
Yeah.
do you still enjoy traveling in your 20s?
No, I don't.
No.
I don't actually. It's a good question. I don't actually. I have hated traveling since I was about maybe 20 or 21. I've hated it. I used to love it, but I hate it. I hate traveling now. I don't enjoy it at all. Like I haven't been on a big trip in like 5 or 6 years. I like no desire to do it. I don't know. I just have like so much more stuff in my apartment and so much more stuff that I use on a daily basis. I use a lot of like supplements, and there's a lot more stuff that I do. And like traveling, it's like every year it seems like there are more and more things that have to come with me. So no, I it's great. I'm really happy I had all these experiences, but definitely not anymore. Definitely not something I'm looking to do.
And so is New York City your jam then? That's the place that
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
I always say
Yeah.
that if FF Expo were in New York City, there'd be a chance of convincing me to go.
Yeah, I mean, that would be pretty dope though. I
Well,
think,
that would be great. I mean, then I might go.
then you might go. I know. That's yeah. Well, I've been to New York City one time.
Only once?
And yeah, only once,
Oh.
and I got lost, and it was fun at night,
Where'd you get
and I was
lost?
drunk. Times Square. Well, out not in Times Square. That's where we were staying. We had gotten my wife dropped her glove. I got stuck while she got off, and I was still on, and I
On the
ended up
subway?
yeah on the subway, and I didn't know what.
Oh,
And I'm like one of those
this is not good.
anxiety, like, but I was also drinking, so I
And that
was
was your
like,
first time in New York
it
City,
was my
so,
first
like,
time, and my
the
phone was
time
dead. Oh my god.
Oh.
Oh
Oh,
my
that's not
gosh. And
ideal.
the how I figured out how to get back to my hotel was I had my key card, so I knew what the address was, and I was walking into these places, and they were like, "Can't use our phone, blah, 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 blah." I finally just kept walking, and then I was like, "Times Square, I know I'm in the right area."
You can
So,
walk to Times Square from
yeah.
where I live.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah, it would
Yeah.
be like a 30 to 35-minute walk, but
That's
you could
that's
walk there.
about what I walked. I don't know where I was originally, but, I got to the hotel and my wife was getting off the elevator right when I
Really?
was getting on it. It was like one of these, like, movie moments, but it was that was insane.
Yeah,
And
New
I'm
York City
very
can be
hang out.
very I'm so used to it, but it can be very intimidating if it's your
Yes.
first
Oh
time.
my gosh, and she wants to go back, and I do too, but, like, I'm intimidated by it. So,
Yeah, I promise that I always promise that if anyone ever visits New York City that I will help them, like, get around,
feel a little
tour
more at
around, yeah.
ease. Yeah, it was one of those. But it's a story too, so but it was really fun and I enjoyed it and we did all like the sightsee stuff and everything. So, that was fun. It was a while back. So I have to get back out there.
Yeah, I definitely do want there to be a fantasy event in New York City. That would be great. Haven't met very many people from the fantasy community.
Who have you met from the fantasy community?
Literally
Like,
just John Hesterman, and that's it.
okay, well there you go.
That's it.
Hey,
Like,
and that's
no
it.
one else.
Well,
I've never met anyone else. I
let's
mean, most
go.
of my
Let's get something going. Let's get something going
yeah.
up in New York.
I
I
know
mean, people wanna come to New York, you know?
I'm pretty extroverted, but the chances I go to the FF Expo ever, and anyone's listening to this, I'm sorry if you're disappointed. The chances I go are zero. So they are zero, zero chance. Not that I dislike the FF Expo or anything, but like a huge tent event like that is not going to be something I enjoy. It's not going to be something. If it were in New York City and I could walk there,
Yeah.
maybe there's a chance you could drag me out there for a couple of hours and I could like, but I'm not gonna like take a plane. I don't feel comfortable with that type of event. It isn't my thing. It's kind of never been my thing. And to be like bluntly honest about the main reason I don't want to go, it's because there's way too many people in the fantasy industry that I never want to meet. And like I just prefer to stay behind my computer screen and I never see them. And I'd rather like I'm good.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to go to this type of event. If it were New York City, maybe I'd force
Maybe.
myself to go, but I feel bad. People literally ask me if I'm going constantly, and I always have to tell. Like I've stopped leading them on. And now I've just been like, it's not gonna happen.
No, it's not
Sorry.
happening, sorry. I went last year and I had a bit of some anxiety situation going on, and it was kinda, like, not the greatest it was a great weekend. The people I met were great and everything, but, like, the way I felt internally was not amazing, but I have it I'm, like the whatever in me is like planning this out like way in advance now, not just like waiting till the last minute and letting my wife do everything because she planned a
Yeah.
trip for her, not a trip for me. So it didn't. I was staying at a different hotel. I had to drive. I was just like, it wasn't great.
Yeah, I can't imagine that I would enjoy it. So
So I mean, and there you go
yeah,
again, saying you don't have to do things you don't like to do or you don't want to do or
I
whatever. But
know.
some people feel like though, like they can't say no to stuff or they have to like, are
I've
you
gotten
that
good
type
at
of
that.
person? Or you've gotten good
I've
at that?
gotten good at saying no. Yeah, no, I would say I've turned down about 100 guest spots since I did the last one, which was in July before this one. So I've turned down about 100 opportunities to do a show, and it's mostly because I'm just generally just running on fumes when it comes
Hmm.
to creating fantasy content, and I don't have a lot of extra gas in the tank. And just doing guest spots that I mean, someone put it in a way on Twitter that I was like, I didn't want to say it this way, but this is part of it. Like part of the reason I haven't done guest spots is just because there's just not enough in it for me. Like the just like I don't have energy and I guess I don't need the exposure. There are other people who really need the guest spots. And I have a lot of attention already. I don't really need the extra spots to get myself out there. Um so I feel bad about taking them from like there are people who like would there's so many people who would want that spot more than me. And I just like I just always say no because I don't want to give people like 30% of me. Like I don't want to do it.
And being honest about that is rad, because a lot of people say, "Yeah, I'll do a podcast," and you can hear that they're like
I used to be
tired
that
or
way.
bored, or they don't want to be there, and you can just tell by the way that they sound. And sometimes, yeah, you do have to say no. So it's cool that you at least explain, this is why I'm.
I usually do. Like usually when someone asks me, I'm like, I'm always like, I really appreciate the invite. I
Mhm.
appreciate the invite. I appreciate that you wanted me to be on your show, but I can't do it. I don't have it in me. And someone even today asked me, and they went back and forth a little bit, and I was just kind of like, they were like, if you change your mind, doors open for you anytime. And I was like, that's really nice of you. Like, I really appreciate that. Given that I haven't done any guest spots in my 2 lightest months of the year, the odds are that my mind isn't going to change. I think that that's something that, like, I'm on this show now, but you're probably looking at like a guest spot a year, like a very rare opportunity. Something that I can't pass up, or something I've always wanted. I've always wanted to be on this show, by the way. Um, in case that wasn't obvious, I've always wanted to be on the show.
He's like, ah.
I thought that was obvious. I have always wanted to be on the show,
Well, I
so
appreciate that.
that's why I wanted to do it. But just generally, I don't. And this also isn't talking about fantasy football, so it's not going to burn me out in the same way. But
Mhm.
I just spend too much time in a week talking about fantasy football, talking about players, researching players, and I think I'm at my capacity for fantasy football discussion in a week
Mhm.
right now. So until that changes, I'll probably start doing guest spots when I retire from creating content. And no, if you listened, don't be afraid, no fear. That's not happening anytime soon. I think I have about 10 to 15 years left of creating content. And then I'm going to want to do something else. But for
Yeah.
the next 10 or 15 years,
Okay.
I think you have me.
Okay. See, so this was yes. Because, well, I was just thinking about your age again. I'm like, well, I'm 38 and you're 27, so about when you get to where I am, then maybe.
Yeah. 37 to 42. I was thinking that
Yeah, there you
there'll be
go.
time at that point. At that point in my life, I'll feel like, I've done a great job with this. And now it'll be
Yeah.
time, while I still have time to look at a new career, time to, do something else. Like
Mhm.
I don't think I want to do this for the rest of my life. Like, I don't think I want to be 70 doing this. Like I don't think.
Interesting. I've never really thought about it like that, about like
Well,
being 70 and doing this. Like,
it's just like such a long time scale. Like you
yeah.
don't want to like plan for that long. But I really
Mhm.
just can't see myself, like the grind that I go on. I can't see myself being even 50 and doing
Mhm.
that. I think that, I'm going to want to do something else. I'm going to want to have like a more traditional job at some point, especially as I get older. But, for now, and, I said 10 or 15 years,
Yeah.
I would like to build a career in the space that works for me, and then do it for, you know, however long, 10, 12 years from whenever I start would be my goal.
That's pretty cool. I because I've been doing the same thing for 11 years, and it's boring and whatever, but it's a job and it pays the bills,
Yeah.
and it's actually, I'd rather be bored than stressed, so I'm cool with it. I always tell myself I'd rather be bored than stressed. I
I'd
don't
rather
know
be
though.
stressed.
You'd
I'd
rather
rather
be
be
stressed?
stressed. Yeah. If I had to choose, I would definitely rather be stressed than
Okay.
bored.
I think for work purposes, that's me. But I totally see where
I'd
you'd rather
totally
be
rather
stressed.
be stressed,
But you probably
100%.
are always like got a little bit of stress going on anyway. So I guess
Not too much,
no.
actually.
You're pretty. How do you maintain the coolness?
Um, it's the ego.
It's the ego.
It's the ego. No, seriously. If you don't believe
Hmm.
in yourself and the content you're creating, why on earth would anyone ever listen to you? Why? Why would it's that's always what I say. You better believe if you don't like the content you create. I said this exact thing. If you don't like creating content, you don't like the content you create. No one else will. So like you need to believe in what, especially as if you're giving like advice for fantasy football, like you're telling other people what to do, right? You're telling them no, don't do what you want to do what I want to do. So if I'm going to tell someone that, and I'm going to tell someone, don't listen to your instincts, trust me instead, I better believe in what I'm telling them. Otherwise, that's like I never want to be like fake. If I'm telling someone, do this, I want to be very confident in that advice I'm giving them.
Mhm.
Because if it goes wrong, it's going to be my fault. Whether it's fair or not, it's going to be my fault because I told them not to listen to themselves and listen to me. So, you gotta, and at the end of the day, like if I got it wrong, if it went wrong, it's easy for me to sleep at night because I know that I was confident in my process. It might not have worked out, but I have no doubt that I told them what I believed. And I'm fine dying on that. Like if I go down on what I believed in and the content that I thought was good, the advice I thought was good, at least I don't have to worry about, should I have told them something different? I don't do coulda, shoulda, woulda. Like I don't do that. I just, I believe in it, and nobody's perfect, but that's always what I tell people is if you don't buy what you're selling, it's gonna be tougher to anyone else to buy it.
That is true. The confidence thing is important, and I know some people have said, like, giving advice, sometimes they think, "Oh, man, I hope I don't, give somebody the wrong advice," and then, and when they get especially people when they're first getting started, they're like, I wanna please everybody. I don't wanna, you know,
Oh yeah,
mess
no.
up or, have a
I have
stumble
a
here or there,
I have a message for those people. If you're the best fantasy analyst, the best, literally the best ever, if you're right 70% of the time, 70%, you're the best. You're like a god tier fantasy analyst. 70% of the time is like the best. Those are the best. Absolute best. 70% of the time correct. That means they're wrong 30% of the time. Those are the best.
Mhm.
They're still going to be wrong 3 times out of 10. You're going to be wrong. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
There are
It
going
does
to be
happen.
weeks. There are going to be weeks if you do start sit that your start sit rankings sucked. It will happen. It is unavoidable. Nobody is good every week. Everybody has wrong calls. Like I said, even the best get 30% of them wrong. So, you're going to have to accept that there are going to be times where your rankings didn't work out that week. And what you got to do is just be like, I did the best work I could. I gave it everything. Didn't work out. Brush it off and move on to the next week because you'll get eaten alive if you keep going back. If all you do when you're supposed to start the next week is go back to the previous week and be like, well, maybe I should have this. You just won't. You'll get caught in a circle of self-criticism, and like, believe me, there's enough criticism of you from the consumers out there. Like, cut yourself a little bit of a break, like personally. Like I always say, like, don't be so hard on yourself. Like there's plenty of people willing to criticize you. You don't need to criticize yourself unnecessarily. You make sure you like yourself. Like if you're miserable, nobody's gonna be happy like consuming content from someone who's miserable doing it. Like it shows in the content. And I do think that happy people rank better. Like if you're happy, I really think so. Like I think if you're happy there are studies that have shown this. I watched a show called 100 Humans recently.
Okay.
And there was like it was a whole experiment about people who listen to happy music, like did better on things, and people who listen to sad music or that kind of thing. Like so being in a better mood, I really think if you're happier with the content you're creating, you'll come up with better rankings. As hard as that might be to believe, I really think that that's the case. So I would just tell people that there's always going to be criticism. You're always going to get something wrong, and just brush it off and move on. And if you can't do that, let's say that's hard for you, right? There are some people out there where that's hard for them, right? There are people. Not everyone's like me. There are people who have a lot of anxiety. People who you've talked about this on your show before. People who have imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there are people who feel that way, and I would say, talk to me. My DMs are, my DMs are not open. They're always open to anyone who I follow. They're not there to ask me who to start. They're there to be like, look, the kind of DM I've received a lot in the past is like, look, like I'm creating content, like it's not really going well for me. Like I'm kind of struggling. You have any advice for me? I get that DM pretty often. And I'm always like, well, yeah, sure. I'd love to help you. So like, if you're listening to this and you're in that kind of situation, just find a way to reach out to me. If I don't follow you, tag me and ask something. Be like at Tyler FF Creator. I have a question about my content. Can you DM me? And I will. I'll see it in my notifications feed. So just always, it doesn't have to be me, but reach out to someone who can support you with that. I guess would be what I would say. You're kind of in a if you don't think your content's going well, if you've had some bad rankings weeks, like ask someone for help. Don't just like
Mm-hmm.
don't. I always say like sitting and wallowing. It usually doesn't do you any good.
Truth.
People are
How
there
many?
to support you for sure. There are
They
many
are.
many more people. Because
Yeah,
some people also forget this too, that there are many many more people out there willing to support you than you think.
there really are, and like you shouldn't feel like, especially the people that say that they're willing to help you. You shouldn't feel weird reaching out to them. I know
Very
sometimes it
true.
can feel maybe a little intimidating or whatever, but like,
Yeah, I get that. I get a lot. A lot of the messages are like, "Sorry to bother you,
yeah.
but," and I'm like, "You're really not bothering me. This is why I love doing this. One of the things I love doing the most is helping people with their content, helping people who are struggling with their content. Or look, if you're my friend and in the community and you're listening to this podcast and you have something going on in your life, you can always DM me. I really don't mind. I'm an extroverted person. It actually gives me more social energy to have these conversations, not less.
Mhm.
So, I especially if it's personal, but even if it's just about content, you can always talk to me. I really try to be like an open door for those kind of conversations. And, I occasionally when someone's upset, I proactively reach out to them if I see it. But if you ever feel the need to talk to someone and you're listening to this, hit up my DMs or tag me or something, and we'll find a way to do that.
And here's a fantasy football question. Not really though. You were in the Scott Fish Bowl, correct?
Yes, SFB 10 and 11.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. H- how cool is it to see something like that grow to where it is? And I mean, I just like talking about the Scott Fish Bowl because it really gets everybody amped up.
Sure.
So,
Yeah,
you know,
it's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
It's great. I mean, I made it to semifinals in Scott Fishbowl 10. Not so much this year. I made the playoffs and I was knocked out in the first round. I had I had a team with Ridley, Michael Thomas team. So not, I
Yeah.
was not, I was pretty much dead from the start. Uh, but I ended up making the playoffs anyway because I scratched and clawed. But other than that, well, I wanted to win.
Yeah.
But I will say I didn't have the same motivation the second year. The first year I was like, oh, if I win Scott Fishbowl, people know me. Whereas now I'm like, I don't. It would still be great for me if I won, but people. Scott commented on one of my threads earlier today, talking about how it was a thread about how many championships have you won in a row, and I
Mm,
was, it actually was a moment for me where I was like, it's great that Scott's commenting, but like this just feels normal. Like this
yeah.
just feels normal.
Yeah.
It's nice that it feels normal
Yeah,
for
it
someone
is.
who's done like so much
Oh
for
yeah.
the community. And he's also, if Scott is listening to this, I don't know if he is, but let's say you are. It's really, I know I ramble a lot and I, I apologize for that.
I like it.
I'm a
Go on.
rambler,
I
but
am too.
yeah, no, I've listened to your show and I figured we would get along well because we've
Yeah,
been
we both like
definitely both
to.
ramble. But yeah, Scott, if you're listening to this, you really built something with the Scott Fish Bowl. It's donated a lot of money to charity over the years. It's really one of the few positive events that brings everyone together. One of the few big events that everyone finds positive. And I do always, I hate to see it every year. It happens every year. There's always someone who finds something to complain about. And I'm like, is this really, you really think this is a good idea? Like, you really think this is going to make you look good? Like, It was like, literally, this is the event that's donated the most money to charity in the history of the fantasy football community. The most money to charity. That's charity's a good thing. Like,
Mhm.
this is not a time. Like, it's like, show like a little respect for just like how much good this event. I mean, you see the toys. I mean, over the years, all of that, and I just I appreciate all the good that's done from that. And people are always posting their drafts, all of those things. And there's always group chats, and I was in the Britney Spears division this year. I thought that was very interesting. It's a very interesting group of people in there, and I met a couple of people who I've continued to interact with after
Yeah.
the draft was over, and who I knew. And I was in the 103 chat, and that was kind of nice. Like, talk about strategy. I was in the 101 chat last year with Matthew Berry, and he like actually chatted.
That's
And it was
cool.
kind of like, at the time, I was like just some guy. So like I was like, whoa, I'm in the same group chat as Matthew Berry. Like, that's very cool. But yeah, I don't have enough night. Like, I could go on and on and on about Scott Fishbowl and how great it's been for everyone. And I just ask people, when you're commenting on that, just realize that this is an event that's done a lot of good for children, and just the community in general, and just try to recognize that, even if you're upset that you didn't get in.
Mhm.
It's like, try to see a bigger picture
Yeah.
than with your own personal
Yeah.
whatever with it. So yeah, I encourage people to do that, and take some time to look at the Scott Fishbowl website and some of the pictures and the history. It's all out there. It's the internet.
Yeah.
Everything is what I love about today's world. The internet, the whole history of the Scott Fishbowl. It's easy. It's all in one webpage. You can get the whole history of everything. So you can take a look at like the history of that all in one place, and that's a great thing.
It is, and, how many league do you know how many leagues you're in, or
Oh, it's easy. Yeah, no, I'm basically retired.
there you go. That's what I like to
Yeah,
hear.
no, I don't see. I'm in Trade Addicts 8. I
Mm,
have a lot of, let's see, in Trade Addicts 8, I have well, actually, I'll talk about fantasy for like 1 second. Yeah, I
okay.
have this year, in this year's rookie draft, I picked a bad year to do this, but I have still scrolling. Yeah, I have 27 rookie picks this year. Uh
Oh.
and then I have 6 2023 firsts. So I'm in a good shape in a rebuild there. I
Yeah.
won the championship in the debut season in 2020. I think I set a Trade Addict scoring record in the championship, like all time in
Oh,
the
wow.
championship week. Like, in the championship, I had the highest ever score in Trade Addicts of any week ever. Um,
Ooh. I
and
gotta
then I
come
blew
for
up.
that title next year.
Yeah, and then I blew up my team. That was in
Uh,
2020. I wasn't like a DLF, so I was kind of
yeah,
like, oh, I won a Trade Addicts league, and
that's dope.
I beat Matt Price in the finals. And then I blew up my entire team, and I lost every single game in 2021. 0 and 14.
Wow.
But that's okay, because I have the 101 this year and 6 2023 firsts. So, and
Wow.
I still have some pieces like Lamar and AJ Brown, T Higgins, to build around, Zach Wilson, and then those 27 picks this year and 6 23 first. So I think I'll be okay.
I think you might be okay. We'll see how
Uh,
that we'll look at it at the end of the season, see how it works out for you.
but yeah, the reason I spent so long on that is because there aren't,
Yeah.
like, I'm retired. Like,
Yeah.
I get, if there's one thing I get invited more to get than guest spots, it's leagues. I turn them all down.
Oh, yeah.
I turn them down. I think that it's hard. It
Mm.
is hard for me. I get enough criticism as it is. I get enough criticism as it is, for everything that I do in the community. A lot of stuff that's negative. So whenever I go play in a league, there are going to be people who tie my, look. I don't want to say I played dirty, but I play to win. I play to win. When I play fantasy football, I don't play to make friends. I play to win, and I'll do anything to win. Anything. And unfortunately, that doesn't make friends. And I play a lot. I have a co-manager, and I'm not actually a co-manager on his teams, but I play with him. And yeah, I do play behind the scenes. And then Patreon, my whole Patreon is just helping people manage teams. So, maybe there's 50 teams in there, and I do startup, same thing. I'm not like you don't know that you're really drafting against me. So I still get the chance to play from time to time, but actually playing actively as me, Tyler, yeah, it's Trade Addicts 8, Scott Fishbowl, and that's it. Oh, there's one other team where I like openly co-manage. Uh, so there's that
Yeah.
team that's still hanging around out there. But other than that, that's literally it. Well, other than that, I just hang around behind the scenes, and I like it better that way.
Yeah, me
Um,
too.
Even if I did come back to play, I would still not. I would make a new account or a burner sleeper account or a burner MFL account and not play as myself. I don't want Tyler the fantasy manager to be tied to Tyler the fantasy creator. I want those to be two different people. In Trade Addicts 8, it's a little weird because I've been in there so long, so obviously they know it's me. I didn't get into that league because I got into that league before I was at DLF. My name, like Rush, just randomly picked my name out of hat. He didn't know me. Maybe he knew of me, but like he didn't know me at the time. So I was just randomly chosen. It's a little odd because like me and like Matt Price were both randomly chosen. Me is less weird, but like Matt Price was randomly chosen for that league too, which is like kind of odd, like kind of against. It seemed there were like a lot of content creators who were picked for that league, like randomly.
That's cool though. I like that. Okay, yeah.
Well,
I'm
it's
in
just
Trade Addict 7, so.
oh, are you? I hear
Yeah.
about. So I listened to the Trade Addicts podcast is the second Dynasty podcast I listened to. DLF podcast was the first. The Trade Addicts podcast was second. I've been a patron of Trade Addicts for quite a long time. I used to be in the Trade Addicts group chat, and then I left one day. I left. I still. I mean, I know that I have an open invitation to come back anytime, but I haven't been in that chat in like a couple of years, maybe a year. But I know I do know I have an open invitation, and like I said, Russ. I do call him Russ and not Outhouse.
Yeah, Russ is my dude. So
yes, Russ. Is
I'm only in Russ dynasty leagues. Like I won't be in a league that he doesn't.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of him and his painted nails.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, it's great. It's great, and they just had their 200th episode, which
I did listen
insane.
to. So I really enjoyed it, and you know he's found him and Rocky have really good chemistry. Rocky also is another good friend of mine, and I really like them both. And I just I appreciate both of them have really been there for me throughout my time in the industry. So, and honestly, like a lot of people on the DAP network have. Josh from the Fantasy Timeline is in one of my group chats, and Andrew Hall is also someone I'm pretty close with. So,
yeah, a lot of good people.
Definitely a good group. A good group there. Definitely, I definitely endorse the DAP network feed. If you're listening to this and have not yet subscribed, I suggest
you should
subscribing.
Definitely.
I don't know how many people listen to podcasts without subscribing to them nowadays.
I don't either.
It's more common on YouTube. It's more common on YouTube to watch a video without subscribing to that channel. But I don't think I ever listen to a podcast. Like I subscribe. I don't think I ever listen to a podcast from a podcast channel I don't subscribe to. So I don't know how common that is.
Good. I mean, that's something to look into. That's
I'm sure Russ has the data. Like there is data on that. I've never run a podcast feed. Like when I did the Dynasty Duo, CJ ran the podcast feed. When I do it with Ryan, the Tyler the Fantasy Creator YouTube, when that's turned into the Tyler and Ryan Fantasy Podcast, he runs that podcast feed. And with Cal, now that he's turned Ask DLF into a podcast feed again, he runs that. So I've never been the one like holding the data on the podcast feed. So unfortunately, my knowledge around that topic is a little bit limited. Although I do know the YouTube side because I'm the one who runs my own YouTube channel, but I've never run a podcast feed, so unfortunately, I don't know that. But Russ would have that data.
Yeah, sure. I've seen some of the numbers and stuff on it, and I don't know. I do my own podcast feed for Get Real, and I upload it to his DAP network feed. So it's like different numbers and all kinds of like he uses one thing and I use something else. So everybody does things differently.
Yeah, I know that the DLF feed is almost every podcast in there is simulcast on a separate feed.
It's pretty. interesting behind the scenes stuff, you know?
Yeah, that's all technical stuff, but
All the technical stuff that
yeah,
we're
the technical
both
stuff
like,
that I
"Eh."
don't know that much about, but I can help with really basic questions.
Well, I mean, and really that's all you really need to know to get started at least is the basic stuff, so
Anybody can start a podcast.
yeah.
It's easier to start a podcast than it is to start a YouTube channel.
That's exactly why
Yeah, very
that's
much
why I'm
easier to
not on
start a
YouTube.
podcast.
People were like, "Why don't you have the videos up on YouTube?" Well, there's 2 reasons. One is most of the time people are like, "I don't like the way I look, so don't put me on there because I haven't done my makeup or I haven't put on a
Oh,
clean
I would have
shirt
been I
or
would have been
whatever."
completely you can put this video on
Yeah.
wherever you want. I'm
And that also
completely
requires me doing things, and I'm lazy, or as my therapist says,
well,
maybe ADHD. Either way, it's
I
like,
always
you know
well,
what I mean?
therapy is a great thing that I
It
think
is.
more people should consider. I recently
Definitely.
started.
It's
I feel
great.
comfortable saying that on here.
Well, I
Um,
mean, yeah, and my
yeah,
therapist always says, "Be kind to yourself," which is what every therapist says, but it's basically what you were saying earlier about not being
yeah, no,
hard on yourself, and
that's definitely not why I went to therapy, but I'm sure she would tell me that if I
she
brought that up. Um,
yeah.
yeah, no, it's very much helped. I didn't really go to. I didn't actually really have like a specific problem as to why I went to therapy. It was no reason. Like the last time I
Yeah,
went to therapy was like after I got my breakup, and I was like kind of going to therapy to deal with that, and that was obviously like for a purpose. This
yeah,
time I just kind of went back to therapy for this, not the sake of therapy, but just like a general idea that I thought therapy could help. And it's definitely been helpful. I would always say it's very rare that I would feel like therapy would hurt.
yeah, I don't yeah.
It would rare that it would hurt. I still have to see like the best way to make it helpful for me. And then, it's possible that I decide that I don't want to do it anymore after a couple of more months or something. And maybe it's not for me, but
Yeah.
I don't, it's definitely not hurting. It's either going to be a neutral or a positive for everyone. So I always suggest if you're going through something or just kind of feeling a little bit, I didn't really have anything specifically. I was just kind of feeling a little blah. So I
Yeah.
was just like, maybe therapy will help. And
Yeah.
it certainly hasn't. It certainly has been only a positive. So,
Yeah.
if you're considering it, I definitely recommend giving it a shot.
Me too. Me too.
I always like to shoehorn. I like to shoehorn that message in there whenever
Yeah.
I have a few things like that I always like to shoehorn in. That's one of them that if I'm ever on this type of show where I'm not like live and under extreme pressure to answer questions, I always try to squeeze that kind of stuff in.
Well, since we're towards the end, is there anything else that you wanna squeeze in real quick before we get to plug in all your stuff and all that jazz?
Not really. I just I hope that I didn't come off as an egomaniac.
I mean, you
um,
kinda did, but I think people will be
it's
able to
fine.
tell that's just who no, just kidding.
Yeah.
You
Um,
said it, not me, so
yeah, it's fine. I just I want people to realize that I'm a person.
yeah.
I'm a
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
person, not just like a Twitter icon. Uh, I'm more than just that profile picture. And, I I just really hope that people can realize that this show is not about fantasy football. We're not live. It's not, I don't feel it's not like I was feeling the pressure to hold the audience or anything. That the me that you see on the show or on Twitter is really me. It's not an act. I'm not doing it because whatever, like for whatever reason. If anything, I think I've been a little more raw, honest,
Real.
and ego focused on this show than I am on my fantasy football shows. Because the show is about me and that happens. But I really hate when people think that I'm just doing it for the camera or just doing it for the views. Like I can't be anyone else. I've had the feedback like you're this, tone it down. I'm like, watch someone else. Watch someone else because it's not an act. I can't comply with your request. I can't be different because I'm not trying really to be that way. It's just how I am. Like that's how I am when I talk about fantasy football. I'm just honest. Sometimes it comes off as brutal. Sometimes it comes off as mean. Sometimes it comes off as a little much. But I would rather be me because people will see it if you're trying to be someone else. That'll never work. You might succeed with that for a little while, but it won't work. So I just hope that people see that I try to represent myself as me, and I hope that people are happy with it. And if not, then I'll be okay. But that's okay.
I'm happy with it, so that's all that really matters. Why don't you go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you and what you've got going on?
Yeah. So, I mean, you can find me on Twitter at my new Twitter handle at Tyler FF Creator. And then I'm on the Ask DLF show every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern on the DLF YouTube channel. So you can find us there. And then there's also a podcast feed for that, which you can search Ask DLF on your favorite podcast. I don't know if we're on Apple yet, but we will be soon. Maybe I don't know when this is coming out, but maybe we'll be on Apple by then. I'm hoping for soon. And then I do my show with Ryan at Ryan Pros FF. We do on the Tyler, the Fantasy Creator YouTube, and then on the Tyler and Ryan Fantasy Podcast feed. It's the same show, just two separate places. So yeah, if you just search Tyler, the Fantasy Creator on YouTube, you'll find that show. And then I have my Patreon. Somehow I have patreon.com/fantasy advice. Yes, that was available. I don't know how that was available, but it was. So I have patreon.com/fantasy advice is my Patreon. We're recording this on February 27th. Don't sign up on February 27th or February 28th. I don't know when this is releasing, but hopefully you want to sign up near the beginning of the month because that way you get the most value. And then I have a bunch of different tiers ranging from a $5 tier, which is just my spreadsheet, Discord, and hopefully a show that may release, although the last one was destroyed due to technical difficulties. But I will have Patreon only shows. I'm re-recording it. I will have it very soon. But everything else is on patreon.com/fantasy advice. It's the only place you can find my ranks and yeah, those Patreon only shows, and then my Discord, which is actually getting to be like a nice little community. There's actually like discussion in there. I'm very happy with how that's grown. So, and then yeah, all my articles are at DLF. I never plug my stuff on my own shows because it takes too long. I literally never plug my own stuff. I always let Ryan and Cal plug, but I never plug my stuff. But I think I have plugged everything.
If you didn't, I'll try to link as much stuff as I possibly
it's
can.
Fine. People know where to find me.
Fantasy advice. I mean, boom, that way to get that. That's crazy that was available.
It was 2 years ago, and getting that for my Patreon was I think one of the more valuable things to have. Patreon.com/fantasy advice has been really nice.
Definitely. Okay, everybody, go check out everything that Tyler's doing right now. You got it all. It's all out there for you. And make sure you come back next time for another episode of Get Real with Casey Kasem. Stay rad.